Darkroot Garden is present-day Oolacile, or what is left of it. The Royal Woods share the same terrain, bridges, valleys, buildings, basin, and even the position of the roots and trees match. The tree trunks are also thinner in Oolacile, being younger. Some inhabitants are still around, though they have changed over the years. Gardeners, mushroom people, stone guardians, Alvina, Sif, Dusk, and what's left of Kidan or Artorias. The town of Oolacile and the rest of its population were lost, swallowed by the abyss. After all, the residents of Oolacile were human. Their bloated heads make that clear, their humanity driven wild by the dark of Manus. Before the catastrophe, the gate below would surely have led into the region, since there's nothing else nearby. And similar to New Londo, Oolacile once prospered in isolation from the rest of the land, separated by a sanctuary, with a guardian keeping watch. The region is repeatedly said to be a land of peace. They too formed a unique school of sorcery, different from any others according to Dusk. Their craft centered on the manipulation of light. Light, which in the right hands can render objects invisible, or present them as something entirely new. Similarly, light can make air itself appear as solid as stone, creating the ever-useful illusory walls. But more than that, light is also able to turn the wheels of time, whether by rendering a weapon to its former glory, or through reversing time itself. Oolacile was closely managed by the gods. 3 of Gwyn's 4 knights were later stationed there. The Sanctuary Guardians wield lightning, the power of Gwyn, and battles of stoicism were held there that would honour victors with the path to Anor Londo. But everything went wrong, when, famously, Oolacile made a grave mistake. And speaking of mistakes, one I remember vividly is how I taught myself game development. Don't get me wrong, I loved it. I did game jams, built little prototypes, but it was so hard to stay motivated. Half the time it felt like I was hollowing, just trying to piece together simple things. That's why I'm glad today's sponsor, boot.dev, exists. It's a platform that teaches you coding in a way that actually feels fun. Instead of staring at endless docs, you level up, unlock chests, and even join community boss battles woven into the site's lore. Learning feels less like a slog and more like an adventure. And the skills you get are the real deal. I tried their Git course, which, trust me, is essential. Git is basically the bonfire of development. It saves your progress and lets you recover from disasters. But I focused on object-oriented programming, the backbone of most game engines, i.e. how to actually build the games you've always wanted to make. Plus, you've got options, fun teachers, audio overviews, quizzes, even an AI assistant when you get stuck. You can make an account for free and try demos of every course. Watching lessons costs nothing. The interactive, gamified parts are what you pay for. So if you want to level up your coding skills, whether it's for games, a personal project, or even a new career, check out boot.dev and use my code for 25% off your first year on the annual plan.
Believe it or not, Oolacile has brought the abyss upon itself, fooled by that toothy serpent. They upturned the grave of primeval man and incited his ornery wrath. What could they have been thinking?
It's a good question. What was Oolacile thinking? Not just disturbing the grave, but then making primeval man's humanity run wild. Chester is hardly a reliable source, but Goff's dialogue suggests that Oolacile is responsible for their downfall, irrespective of Karth's influence.
Seduced by a dark serpent or no, they awoke that thing themselves and drove it mad. One's demise is always one's own making.
So let's look at Oolacile more closely. There are 3 architectural styles in the DLC. Oolacile proper is Romanesque, the sanctuary is classical, and the stonework within the chasm is prehistoric in style, with these megalithic structures. First came the prehistoric society, then the sanctuary with its highly weathered stonework, and then Oolacile, whose buildings, despite falling into the abyss, are in remarkably good condition. Oolacile was built on top of various fallen societies, presumably human civilizations if Manus was once buried at its depths. But Oolacile sought to uncover these histories, and invested a great deal to learn about what lay beneath them. The name for Oolacile Sanctuary in Japanese translates to Oolacile Mausoleum. It's a place of reverence, housing some manner of sacred tomb. Sanctuary Guardian translates to Mausoleum Holy Beast, reinforcing the area's reverential themes. The discovery of the chasm beneath took place long before the town fell to dark, because they built lifts to help visit the area. Therefore, they must have both gone often and over a long period to warrant the investment. We already know some of what they found in the chasm. They learnt about ancient human society, discovered the humanity phantoms, and, of course, met the primordial serpent Karth. But is the story really that simple? That they were tricked, mistakenly incited the anger of Manus, and fell to dark? No. Dark Souls is rarely that easy. Just like New Londo and the Ringed City, there's more here than meets the eye. Dusk cannot remember what happened during that period. Elizabeth chooses to never share the truth of Oolacile's fate. The gods will have hidden or manipulated common understanding, and Karth moves on to the next opportunity. But he does, briefly, speak of his disappointment in everyone who came before the chosen undead, which likely applies to Oolacile just as much as it does to the four kings.
They failed me, every last one of them. They were strong, but saw not the truth.
The Japanese translation adds to this, where he says, without understanding the value of truth, they were merely conceited in their power. Now, Karth isn't too reliable himself, but I'm inclined to believe him here, because it fits with his later efforts in Dark Souls 3 with Londo, a spiritual successor of New Londo, which we'll come back to later. Karth didn't lie to humanity here, he simply underestimated them. He failed to see how easily they could be tempted by power, and how that temptation could spiral into ruin. But I don't think Oolacile was naive, at least not at first. As shown by the lifts, there was time between discovering the chasm and succumbing to dark, and there are clues to show their industry during that time. The Oolacile Sanctuary, for example, features a number of stone statues, all facing inwards towards the central bonfire. Though worn down, their shape closely resembles humanity sprites, or more likely, the humanity phantoms we see in the Chasm of the Abyss. Does this scene commemorate the discovery of fire, or perhaps the grave of Manus? Whatever its purpose, the site was clearly sacred to an earlier human civilization, and Oolacile recognized that significance, naming it Oolacile Sanctuary. I also believe Karth would have told Oolacile the same things he later tells the Chosen Undead, about the treachery of Gwyn and his long history of manipulating humanity. But Oolacile didn't just listen, they acted. There's evidence they colluded with New Londo, like the illusory wall there, and their shared involvement in the plot against the gods, as we'll see later. But that's not all. Somehow they learnt about the Ringed City, and were even able to reach it. The antiquated plane set says, when a mission visited the Ringed City long ago, one of its younger missionaries elected to stay behind. That's to say, the mission was to visit and then return to Lordran armed with new insight. It's also interesting to note that Halflight, who stayed behind, wields a katana made from the soul of Midir, the dragon tasked to fight the dark on Gwyn's behalf. Oolacile wasn't naive. They took their time, studied carefully, and broke free of the informational bubble the gods had built around them. Their magic, focused on invisibility, camouflage, and illusion, turned out to be the perfect toolset for quiet rebellion. Even the white birch bow opts for subtlety over strength. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. The antiquated set and its simpler counterpart both stress their impracticality in combat. The Oolacile Catalyst notes their sorceries weren't offensive, and didn't even scale with intelligence. The Ivory Catalyst goes further, describing their sorceries as gentle. Elegant though they were, Oolacile's magic was useless in open war. And this, I think, was the tipping point. After all their study to realise the depth of Gwyn's betrayal, Oolacile realised they still couldn't oppose the gods by force, not with what they had, unless they used the very power Gwyn feared most, unless they embraced the dark. And to awaken that power, they took a reckless step and disturbed Manus, perhaps to study him, or perhaps to provoke him, and in doing so, sealed their fate. There's more to show that Oolacile didn't just fall to dark, but embraced it in defiance of the gods. Take the gate opposite New Londo, for example. It may well have been sabotaged from within, such that the gods couldn't flood the region. Dusk, Oolacile's own princess, likely took part in the plot against the gods some years later, as may have the Mushroom People. But the clearest sign is within the town itself. When an area is filled with statues, it typically means at least one of two things: that the subjects were either deeply revered by the locals, or that they conquered or led the place. In this case, it might have been both. There are no depictions of Gwyn, but there are many of his youngest son, Gwyndolin, who himself is a user of illusion magic, and a master of light, as though learnt through Oolacile's unique school. These statues were once honoured, but by the time of the DLC, every single one has had its head removed. A storytelling method FromSoft later used in Elden Ring's DLC with the statues of Marika. The message is clear. Oolacile rejected Gwyndolin and the gods he represented, because they knew they were too weak to ever stand against them in open war. They threw caution to the wind, turning to the dark in the hope that it might grant them the strength they otherwise lacked. But in the end, they were consumed before such a revolt could even begin.
One's demise is always one's own making.
In the time since Oolacile's downfall, the region changed a lot. The town was lost entirely, and darkness took over the forest. The forest hunters were formed by Alvina, and Artorias was given a more fitting tomb in what was once the Oolacile Sanctuary, a place that had otherwise lost its importance. There's also been a lot of new development since the DLC. For example, the entire area leading up to the forest hunters is new. The winding path down the cliffside leading into the basin, the watchtower and the undead burg, the bridge, and the fort. In the DLC, there was not one mention of Seath, but now the Duke's presence is everywhere. There's the butterfly, his own creation, of which there are many more in the crystal caves. There's a number of crystal golems, only otherwise found in his archives, including a golden golem that imprisons Dusk. just like the one holding Sieglind in the Archive Gardens. There's a Hydra, which likely hails from the open ocean of Ash Lake, where Seath also stole some clans that once lived in the beach environment. Finally, there is also, all the way over in his archives, a crystal golem who, for some reason, drops the broken pendant, the very item taken from Manus that drove him mad, and that allows access to the DLC in the first place. FromSoft had to release a lot of media to make sure players would find the DLC. They knew it was difficult to work out, but they designed it this way nonetheless. Therefore, it must have been done like this for lore reasons. There's an important story behind Seath's influence in the Gardens after the DLC. There's been a lot of human activity too. Havel, or one of his followers, is locked up in the Watchtower. The body of Faris rests on a nearby ledge. There's a bonfire in a secret tunnel that leads down to the Valley of the Drakes and New Londo. Next to the broken lever into the city lies a body with the red Tearstone ring, and within New Londo is the infamous ring of the Earl of Kareem. Not forgetting Dusk, who is captured and hidden behind the Hydra. For those familiar with our previous videos, you'll notice these all share a common theme. A link confirmed by the last oddity of the area, a Black Knight. Keeping watch over Havel's tower, and the secret tunnel leading to New Londo. Black Knights are always evidence of anti-rebel defense. The Tomb of the Giants, the Catacombs, the Undead Burg, all of these relate to the plot against the gods, a rebellion where a group of rebels sought to steal the power of Nito and overthrow the gods. Now, the details of the plot aren't what's important here. What I'm trying to highlight is that there is a pattern to the area, and how everything seems to somehow be connected. Keep that in mind. For example, we've previously theorized about this house, the nearby Black Knight and the corpse it watches over, the broken bridge to the Watchtower, and how this might have been the method used to trap Havel in the first place. But whatever you believe, Havel or his follower did at some point intend to pass through the Watchtower and got trapped. Which begs the question, what was Havel doing there in the first place? He must have been either travelling down to, or coming up from, Darkroot Basin. The plot itself took place in Nito's domain, shown by the Black Knights, the effigy shield, and the fact it was Nito's power they tried to steal. And yet, Havel passed through Darkroot, an area somewhat far from the Tomb of the Giants, so often that his enemies could plan for it ahead of time and trap him. Havel wasn't just out for a walk. He was treading a familiar path that he and the plotters often took. Down the Watchtower, across the basin, down into the Valley of the Drakes, and into New Londo, a city of humans filled with evidence of rebel activity, the Earl's Ring, the plentiful Titanite, the hidden wall that the plotters commonly used, most notably by Havel himself. And of course to hide the path to Ash Lake. Again, we will worry about the details later, as there is plenty we need to uncover first, but we at least have some threads to follow now. Seath, Oolacile's rebellion, the plot against the gods, the flood of New Londo. All of them side by side, and somehow related. It's too much to be mere coincidence. There's a deeper story at play here, just out of reach. At least, for now. So instead, let's turn to the flood of New Londo, which is too often overlooked. A catastrophe that might well have also been Oolacile's fate had things played out differently. It's a unique event, unlike any other in Dark Souls, and if we can uncover the truth of what happened there, then perhaps we can work backwards and begin to see what set it all in motion. If you made it this far, consider supporting the channel and get early access to upcoming releases, feature your own theories on the channel, or even get access to new Lore Before Bed videos ad-free for less than $1. Your support makes content like this possible, so thank you.